Just when the public thought the royal family had regained control, a confidential legal summons has shattered that illusion. Lawyers representing the royal estate have issued a demand that could split the monarchy in two. At the centre, King Charles and Princess Anne's siblings, now caught in a dangerous spiral of mistrust, conflicting loyalties, and financial power plays. What triggered this sudden storm? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The first wave came quietly, letters marked confidential, addressed not to family members, but to legal representatives tied to the monarchy's most prized properties: Balmoral Castle, Sandringham Estate, and a third, unnamed holding that had somehow escaped the public record. The documents weren't mere inquiries. They were demands urgent, official, and cloaked in unsettling language. For years, the royal estate's quiet traditions had been guided more by honour than by paper. But this time, it wasn't about legacy, it was about law. What followed inside the palace walls was nothing short of seismic. King Charles, newly settled into his reign yet still navigating the aftershocks of the Queen's passing, made it clear from the outset, these properties were integral to the monarchy, symbolic strongholds. And, as monarch, he claimed them outright. But for Princess Anne, it wasn't just a matter of stone and soil, it was a matter of broken promises. Verbal assurances, allegedly made by their late mother assurances, she says, were ignored the moment Charles ascended the throne, ignited a flame that had been smouldering beneath years of silence. The Queen's private will, long presumed to be aligned with the official record, was now whispered to contain unacknowledged clauses, hidden wishes, codicils that, if interpreted differently, could hand entire slices of the estate into Anne's hands. Or worse, reveal decisions the Queen made in the twilight of her life that now threatened to divide her children in ways no one had anticipated. Inside sources describe the growing influence of Queen Camilla as a major flashpoint. Behind closed doors, she reportedly urged Charles to hold firm, cautioning that any concessions to Anne would not only weaken the crown's grip on symbolic land, but also set a precedent that could fracture royal authority down the line. Charles, already uneasy with the weight of a monarchy under pressure, now faced legal fire from within his own bloodline and advice that only fanned the flames. The scale of the estate itself raised the stakes even higher. With estimates hovering above £1.5 billion and historical obligations embedded in certain lands, this wasn't just a family disagreement, it was a potential constitutional powder keg. And as lawyers began digging, they uncovered more than just paperwork. They uncovered a carefully guarded legacy now exposed to scrutiny. Insiders close to the case say this was no accident. One former courtier, speaking under anonymity, claimed that someone wanted this to go public. Someone wanted war. For all its pomp and polish, the House of Windsor now faced something more volatile than scandal betrayal from within. And the longer the silence stretched from Buckingham Palace, the louder the whispers became. But what exactly are the hidden promises, buried documents, and unspoken tensions that led to this explosive legal intervention? Long sealed behind palace doors, Queen Elizabeth's private testament has resurfaced like a ghost from the past, containing cryptic directives and eyebrow-raising omissions. While the public saw a queen of order and grace, her final wishes may hold the seeds of royal discord. Did she intend to provoke a clash between her two most dutiful children? What began as whispers among trusted aides has now erupted into a full-blown palace crisis. Months after Her Majesty's state funeral, buried under layers of tightly controlled royal documentation, an alleged second will emerged, one that bypassed the official legal channels and slipped through a side door of royal protocol. The existence of this document was never meant for public knowledge, let alone scrutiny. But now that it's out, the monarchy's foundation feels anything but steady. In this will quietly unearthed by a clerk within the royal archive lies a stunning deviation from what had been formally disclosed. Specifically, the inclusion of a lesser-known Scottish hunting estate, a place tied not just to the Queen's personal memories but to promises allegedly made to her daughter, Anne. Sources close to Princess Anne say the Queen had long cherished that estate as a private escape, one she often shared with her only daughter during times of emotional upheaval. There, away from the eyes of press and protocol, the Queen and Anne reportedly formed a bond deeper than duty. So when this estate was named in the second will bequeathed directly to Anne, it didn't come as a surprise to those within her inner circle. But it did send shockwaves through Charles's legal team, who immediately raised objections. They claimed the phrasing was vague, the signature suspicious, and the date of execution alarmingly close to the Queen's final weeks, when her capacity, they imply, may have been compromised. The legal language itself reads like a puzzle box, no direct mentions of property titles, but instead riddled with phrases like, "the place of our shared solace," and "to the one whose loyalty never sought recognition." Lines that Anne's supporters argue point directly to her, while Charles's side argues that such poetic flourishes could refer to anyone. It's this ambiguity that has lit the match, and the fire is spreading quickly. Buckingham Palace has refused to issue a statement, feeding the media frenzy and igniting speculation that even more unseen documents could surface. Now, the spotlight turns to the Queen's former private secretary, the very man responsible for safeguarding her papers. Once considered a pillar of discretion, he now finds himself under intense scrutiny, with investigators quietly questioning the integrity of the archive's chain of custody. Some insiders believe the will was intentionally buried, others believe it was forgotten entirely. But neither possibility bodes well for the royal image. Behind every denial lies a deeper crack in the facade of unity the monarchy clings to. And while the legal papers make headlines, the emotional fracture between Charles and Anne is where the real storm is brewing. For decades, Charles and Anne were seen as the royal family's most dependable pair, bound by shared duty, forged in childhood hardship. But beneath the surface, old scars never truly healed. Now, with the estate in dispute, that bond is under siege like never before, and the rift may have begun long before lawyers got involved. In the gilded halls of royal tradition, few relationships appeared more united than that of Charles and Anne. But even as they stood shoulder to shoulder through the decades opening hospitals, enduring scandal, upholding protocol, there was always a quiet imbalance hiding behind the smiles. Charles, born first and crowned heir, was groomed from the beginning for power. Anne, only 2 years younger, was trained for resilience. While Charles studied the burden of destiny under the relentless gaze of the crown, Anne carved her path in silence, always present, rarely praised. She bore the weight of duty without the grandeur of attention, and for years, it seemed she accepted her role without resentment. But deep down, something hardened. Childhood favoritism is the wound that never truly closes. Courtiers remember moments when Charles was paraded as the future of the realm, while Anne stood in the background, her accomplishments dismissed as expected, her voice too often unheard. She took on more engagements than her brothers combined, yet rarely made headlines. Her sense of duty was forged, not for the spotlight, but out of principle, a value instilled by the Queen herself. But principle has its limits, especially when promises are broken. Behind closed doors, Anne has reportedly held firm to a long-standing belief that her mother made her a personal vow, a promise that she would inherit certain lands, ones not for their value, but for what they represented: sanctuary, remembrance, and recognition. Properties where the Queen and Anne shared their most vulnerable conversations, places tied to grief, to rebuilding, to history. But now, with the estate lawyers involved, Charles has dismissed these claims as hearsay. As king, he believes the monarchy's holdings must remain under the sovereign's control, regardless of personal memory. He sees Anne's insistence not just as defiance, but as a threat to his authority. The press, never kind to family disputes, has already chosen its angles. The forgotten princess, the defiant sister, the king who won't compromise. Every headline chips away at what little trust remains between them. Camilla's growing presence has only made matters worse. Once a quiet consort, she now wields significant influence in Charles's inner circle, and her opinion reportedly carries weight on every matter, including the estate dispute. To Anne, this shift is not just political, it's personal. The woman who once caused so much fracture within the family now shapes the king's stance on her future. And so, the tension builds. Not with outbursts or shouting matches, but with cold silences, missed phone calls, and carefully worded public statements. Years of shared sacrifice mean nothing if trust is gone. And as the nation watches, it becomes clear this is no longer about documents or deeds. This is about who was heard, who was ignored, and who will be remembered. But this isn't just about inheritance, it's about legacy, promises, and the unseen cost of royal loyalty. Suddenly, whispers become front-page headlines. Confidential letters are leaked. Meetings once held in shadow now erupt in full daylight. The legal teams, each armed with decades of royal knowledge, have declared quiet war, and their weapons, leverage, legacy, and precisely timed revelations. The moment the leaked documents hit the press, the tone inside the palace shifted from cautious concern to outright panic. What was once a private dispute between siblings had now spilled into the public arena, exposing not only Princess Anne's formal legal claims, but also the depth of the rift that had festered behind closed doors. The leaked pages outlined Anne's assertion to specific properties, a direct challenge to the king's control, and were unmistakably authentic. The language was precise, and the tone unmistakably assertive. Someone close to the inner circle had allowed these pages to surface. Whether by accident or intent, the damage was immediate and far-reaching. In response, royal solicitors moved with ruthless speed. Outside crisis management firms were brought in, firms known for handling reputational disasters for political leaders, billionaires, and fallen titans. Their job wasn't just to spin the story, it was to suffocate it, to contain it before it could stain the monarchy's already fragile public image. Statements were drafted and discarded. Threats of legal action were quietly floated to key journalists, but the damage had already sunk its claws in. The people had seen the papers, they had read the language, and worse still, they had started to choose sides. Charles's legal team grew more aggressive by the hour. Internal investigations were launched, allegedly under the guise of information leaks, but in reality, designed to expose loyalties within the palace itself. Who spoke to the press? Who leaked the drafts? Who knew about Anne's filings before they became tabloid fodder? But it wasn't just legal strategy driving the chaos, it was fear. Fear that the crown's long-held secrecy had been shattered, and fear that someone powerful was now working against them from the inside. Whispers began swirling that Queen Camilla had held private conversations with Anne's legal counsel, unconfirmed, but deeply unsettling. If true, it suggested not just meddling, but division within the king's own home. It painted a picture of a royal marriage, tested by conflicting loyalties, and of a queen perhaps playing a game of survival in a house no longer governed by unity. The palace refused to comment, but courtiers noticed shifts. Different faces attending different meetings, doors once open now closed, and in these quiet silences, allegiances were being drawn. Even more shocking were the rumors that another royal, unidentified, but speculated to be one of the lesser scrutinized siblings, had begun offering private support to Anne. Whether out of personal conviction or quiet revenge, this shift sent tremors through the structure of the monarchy. What had started as a legal disagreement was now morphing into a slow-brewing civil war inside Britain's most guarded institution. And with each passing day, the battle lines grew clearer and bloodier. But while the legal machines clash, another bombshell emerges, one that could collapse everything Charles has fought to protect. Behind every royal facade lies a secret pact, and Balmoral was once at the heart of one such promise. A quiet conversation, a verbal agreement, a broken trust. Was Anne misled by her own brother, or is there more to this mysterious Balmoral understanding than anyone dares admit? Years before Queen Elizabeth's passing, while the nation saw nothing more than carefully staged photo calls and holiday traditions, a very different moment unfolded behind the stone walls of Balmoral Castle. It was said to be a private, almost sacred exchange between mother and daughter Anne, the tireless workhorse of the monarchy, and Elizabeth, who understood more than anyone the toll of silent sacrifice. According to multiple sources, the Queen confided her desire for Balmoral, her spiritual home, to become Anne's permanent retreat, a space for her children and grandchildren to inherit. Not as a political stronghold, but as a legacy of trust and devotion. Charles, reportedly present during this conversation, offered no objection, at least not then. But that moment, once a symbol of quiet unity, has now transformed into the heart of the storm. Anne has stood firm in claiming that the Queen's promise was explicit, heartfelt, and deeply personal. Yet Charles, now wearing the crown and carrying the weight of sovereignty, has dismissed the event as a misinterpretation. He argues that no formal record was kept, no legal agreement signed, just words, exchanged during a time of sentiment, not settlement. But in the royal family, words aren't just words, they're everything. The conflict deepened when a former royal aide stepped into the shadows and claimed to possess something extraordinary. A handwritten note, allegedly from the Queen herself, written shortly after that Balmoral discussion. The note, while not legally binding, is said to echo the Queen's wishes for the estate, referencing Anne by name and alluding to the importance of honouring loyalty beyond duty. The existence of this note has thrown lawyers into a frenzy. Could a single piece of paper challenge the King's authority? Could a mother's private sentiment outweigh a sovereign's legal hold? Meanwhile, the estate managers at Balmoral are trapped in a dangerous tug-of-war. With conflicting directives arriving from both royal siblings, decisions as simple as maintenance budgets or staff scheduling have become political powder kegs. One manager allegedly refused a directive from Anne's office, only to be replaced days later by a Charles-appointed overseer. What was once a serene retreat has now become a battlefield. Staff morale has plummeted. Some refuse to speak on record. Others admit they fear they'll be forced to choose sides in a war they never enlisted for. What makes this feud more devastating is its origin not greed, not politics, but trust. A trust Anne believed in. A trust Charles now claims never existed. In the court of public opinion, it's no longer about deeds or property titles. It's about whether the monarchy, in its most sacred spaces, still holds its word. And as this personal betrayal unfolds, the effects ripple outward, dragging the next generation into a battle they never asked for. Zara Tindall always stayed out of palace politics until now. As her mother's inheritance hangs in the balance, Zara finds herself thrust into a bitter legal and emotional war. But her response will shock even the most seasoned royal observers, as family loyalty meets hard truth. For years, Zara carved her own path outside of royal titles, free from the burden of official duty, but never far from the institution that shaped her. She was the royal with the common touch, Olympian, mother, horsewoman, and loyal daughter. But now, with her mother, Princess Anne, embroiled in a legal clash that threatens to fracture the monarchy, Zara is being pulled into the very world she once quietly avoided. At first, her stance was measured silent, respectful. But the moment she was photographed exiting a discreet meeting with estate lawyers, everything changed. That single image, Zara in conversation with legal counsel, was enough to send alarm bells ringing inside Buckingham Palace, and it sent Charles into a fury. Sources close to the palace say the king felt blindsided. He viewed Zara's involvement not only as defiance, but as a breach of the family's unspoken code. Those outside the core line stay silent. But Zara's actions weren't loud, they were deliberate. She didn't speak to the press. She didn't make a public statement. Instead, she offered her mother something far more powerful, a presence, a symbolic gesture that said, "You're not alone." And in a family where public support is rare and strategic, that gesture spoke volumes. But support, especially in the royal world, comes at a cost. Within days of the photo's release, security concerns were raised. Zara reportedly made inquiries about enhanced protection not just for herself, but for her children. Tabloids were now circling, stories were being spun, and Zara's name was being pulled into the same battlefield Anne had been navigating alone. For a woman once shielded from the intensity of royal politics, Zara was now in the crossfire. The reaction within the younger generation of royals has only deepened the fault lines. Behind the scenes, Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice have quietly expressed sympathy for Anne's situation. Both women, often sidelined in matters of succession, understand the sting of being overlooked, of giving loyalty and receiving silence. Their private messages to Zara, according to insiders, carried warmth, empathy, and subtle encouragement. But even those whispers of support have unsettled the palace. For Charles, every flicker of dissent feels like a rebellion waiting to ignite. And then there's Mike Tyndall, Zara's husband. A man once embraced as the down-to-earth addition to the royal circle, now allegedly warned by senior figures to avoid media commentary and remain uninvolved. The subtext was clear: stay in line, or risk consequences. But the public isn't buying it. On social media, support for Anne and Zara is swelling. Hashtags trend, opinion pieces call for transparency, and silence from the palace only fuels the fire. For the first time in decades, the public isn't watching a royal spectacle, they're choosing a side. And more often than not, that side is Anne's. And just when the royal camp thought it had contained the fire, an old adversary returns to fan the flames. Behind palace walls, Queen Camilla has always played a strategic role, but this time, she's stepped directly into the arena. With the king's image crumbling and Anne's support growing, Camilla makes a bold and private move that could change the balance of power forever. For years, Camilla operated from the sidelines, always present, always watching, but rarely at the forefront of royal decision-making. But that was before the legal chaos, before the estate disputes threatened to pull the monarchy into an abyss of public division. Now, faced with Anne's growing public support and Charles's increasingly fragile grasp on authority, Camilla has taken matters into her own hands. In an act both calculated and quietly explosive, she reached out, not to palace staff, not to Charles, but to a legal heavyweight from her personal circle. A figure with deep ties to influential political circles and a reputation for resolving disputes discreetly and ruthlessly. The meeting was held in secret at Clarence House. No aides, no notes, no Charles. The very exclusion of the king sent a clear signal. Camilla was making moves independent of her husband, and not even the sovereign was immune from her maneuvers. The subject? Anne. More specifically, how to bring her to the table not as a sister, not as a royal, but as a legal opponent. The goal, insiders suggest, was to pressure Anne into a quiet resolution, one that would preserve the estate's integrity under the king's control and avoid further embarrassment for the crown. But Anne is no stranger to pressure, and certainly no stranger to Camilla's brand of diplomacy. When Charles learned of the meeting, his reaction was anything but calm. Sources close to the king say he was deeply shaken, not only by the secrecy, but by the implication that his own wife no longer trusted his leadership to resolve the family's internal war. For a man already battling public doubt and familial division, Camilla's private outreach struck a nerve, and it showed that even within the highest room of power, confidence in the king was beginning to fracture. The tabloids were quick to jump on the scent. Reports surfaced suggesting Camilla's sudden involvement was driven not by loyalty to Charles, but by fear. Fear of losing symbolic control over properties tied to her own influence, particularly those she's come to consider personal retreats. The optics were damaging. Camilla's once carefully guarded image of restraint now risked being recast as interference. Meanwhile, the tension between Anne and Camilla escalated beyond whispers. At a recent family gathering described by one attendee as colder than the Scottish wind, the two women reportedly exchanged pointed remarks over the estate proceedings. Neither raised their voice, but their silence afterward said everything. Anne, hardened by decades of overlooked service, and Camilla, steeled by survival in a monarchy that once rejected her, now stood on opposing ends of a legacy neither was willing to surrender. But with each move, the stakes rise, and a long-forgotten royal protocol may now hold the key to peace or complete collapse. In the archives of Windsor lies a nearly forgotten clause created in a time when royal unity was paramount. Now, with the monarchy on the brink of familial implosion, lawyers dust off this ancient protocol. And its power? It may force a decision neither Charles nor Anne is ready to face. The clause, tucked away in a dusty corner of royal protocol drafted during the reign of King George VI, was never meant for modern eyes. But desperate times have a way of resurrecting buried solutions. As the legal battle between Charles and Anne spirals into a public spectacle, one senior legal advisor, armed with institutional memory and growing concern, unearths a document long thought irrelevant. Its contents are astonishing. A formal guideline for resolving royal inheritance disputes, designed to protect the monarchy from internal collapse in the event of high-level conflict. It grants power to the reigning monarch to settle such matters, but only if they fulfill two critical conditions. The first, fairness must be evident to all parties. The second, the full royal family must be consulted in council, not privately, not symbolically, but openly and with record. Anne, upon learning of the clause, wastes no time. She demands its reading at a closed-door session with senior royals, present an act that is both procedural and deeply symbolic. Her message is clear. This is no longer just a matter of private negotiation. It is now a matter of constitutional precedent. The weight of history now rests on Charles's shoulders, and the eyes of the institution are on his next move. But the king, normally so deliberate, hesitates, not out of ignorance, but out of fear. Fear that honouring the clause will set a precedent that limits his power, fear that it will embolden future challenges, and perhaps, most unsettling of all, fear that the very system built to protect him could now bind him. Meanwhile, public opinion surges further into Anne's corner. A national poll, published just days after the clause was mentioned in legal filings, shows a sharp swing in favour of her claim. The people see her as the wronged party, the one upholding honour while the institution defends control. Social media erupts with hashtags and opinion pieces, many of them calling the clause the monarchy's moral compass. And with each passing day of silence from the king, pressure builds not just from the outside, but from within. In a rare and startling development, a high-ranking official whose name remains protected threatens resignation should the clause be ignored. Their message to Charles is direct: use the clause, or risk losing the moral legitimacy of the crown. It is no longer a legal strategy. It is a question of survival. The monarchy stands at a precipice, its foundation rattled not by scandal or scandalous lovers, but by something far more dangerous: unresolved truths and unacknowledged loyalty. Now, as the final deadline looms, one moment of truth remains: what price will Charles pay to preserve the crown? The deadline arrives. Tension thickens. Charles enters the historic chamber alone, clutching the very document that may define his reign. The decision he makes will not just settle property, it will settle the question of whether the monarchy is still bound by honour or only by power. For days, the palace had remained in lockdown emotionally, politically, legally. Meetings stretched deep into the night. Statements were drafted, then destroyed. The air around the monarchy had grown heavier than at any time in recent memory. Advisors warned of reputational collapse. Family members stopped speaking altogether. And as the hour drew near, all eyes turned to Charles, the monarch caught in a firestorm of inheritance, loyalty, and legacy. In the end, it was neither legal might nor royal pressure that forced his hand. It was the growing sense that, if he did not act now, the institution his mother spent her entire life protecting could crumble from within. In a move that stunned many and satisfied few, Charles announced his decision. A partial division of the disputed estate would proceed. Balmoral, the most emotionally loaded of the royal properties, would be awarded to Anne on the condition that it remain outside of commercial use and under the symbolic umbrella of the crown. Additional properties, long whispered about but never confirmed, would be quietly transferred under similar stipulations. It was a compromise that neither crowned Anne a victor nor branded Charles a tyrant, but it was far from resolution. Anne's public response was measured and deeply telling. Her words, though respectful, carried an unmistakable undercurrent of emotional fracture. She thanked her brother for recognizing the spirit in which certain commitments were made, but she did not pretend that wounds had not been inflicted along the way. One line lingered in the minds of the nation. Some decisions bring relief, others bring understanding. Rarely do they bring both. It was as close to an admission of betrayal as the Princess Royal would ever allow herself to make. Conspicuously absent from the formal appearance that followed the announcement was Queen Camilla. Her non-attendance sparked a fresh round of speculation. Had the internal conflict reached her doorstep? Was her influence over the king now in question? The palace issued no clarification, offering only a brief mention of prior engagements, a line no one believed. The public, as always, was divided. Some hailed the decision as wise, calling Charles a peacemaker who sacrificed pride for unity. Others saw weakness, interpreting the compromise as the beginning of a slow unraveling of royal authority. Social media burned with debate, editorials poured in, and approval polls swung wildly in the following hours. But for all the noise, one sentiment cut through. The monarchy had not healed. It had simply paused the bleeding. And yet, beneath the surface, the fracture lines remain. Conversations once warm are now clinical. Trust, once held in unspoken glances, has been replaced with measured distance. The estates may have been divided, but the damage? That remains intact. The royal stage may seem calm once again, but behind the curtain, deep fractures remain, waiting for their next cue. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.